Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Time for Personal Finance with Warren Ingram this evening. A reminder, please, your questions, 072-702-1702. You can call as well. Might be easier sometimes on 011-883-0702 and 0214460567. A great topic suggested by Warren, the co-founder at Galileo Capital and a certified financial planner, financial advisor, about how survival is succeeding. Warren, good evening. How's it? You really have picked a good topic on a night like tonight.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time when we're looking at sort of in the world in a stormy place, and and if you live in some parts of this country, it's literally stormy now. You just wonder, how do we succeed in life? And I think we often forget that sometimes, whether it's in business or investing, success sometimes is just getting up and being able to get up tomorrow and to keep going and to give yourself a chance to keep building and keep moving forward. And I think that's tonight's topic, is how do we actually redefine success? And I thought to talk about two of the bigger investors in the world, one in a South African context and one in a global context, was Warren Buffett and Alan Gray. And both of those two people ran very successful investment companies, but they both very early in their businesses' lives came very close to having to shut down because things had gone horribly wrong. And if you'd asked them at that time, what does success look like? It was really just being able to carry on going for another day, another week, and another month. And when you look back, both of them built businesses and careers that extended far beyond 50 years.
I mean, it really is, if you survive and if you still have fight in you and you're still there tomorrow, you're actually making progress. That's the thing to remember in this. The thing is to not let your head get too low below the water.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we do things to harm ourselves. In other words, we take actions that maybe out of fear, maybe out of greed, maybe just simply out of jealousy, where we take big risks or uninformed decisions, and we lose sight of the fact that in the investment world, you're doing investments for periods of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and so taking very big risks, which could kind of put you back to zero or maybe even put you into debt. All you're doing is you're setting yourself back tremendously. And if you've taken a risk that blows up your investments entirely, or maybe puts you in a position of liquidation, for example, then what you've really done is lost a race that you just have no chance of competing in. And the people next door who do no big risks, but they incrementally move forward day after day and week after week and month after month, they're giving themselves a chance to succeed in small increments. And I think that, for me, that's maybe the secret here, is we have to reframe what we think success is. It's certainly not, driving a fancy car or maybe just standing in front of a fancy car on Instagram and thinking, the world needs to think I'm successful. That's not success at all.
No, of course. All right, let's go through some rules for survival. Your questions for, and of course, on 072-702-1702. And the first one is kind of obvious, and yet is the biggest mistake we make. It is simply, don't take silly risks. Or to put it another way, don't be daft.
Don't do dumb stuff. And I think maybe just to make it a bit more concrete. So a lot of the time, on the show, we'll get questions, and sometimes people will say, I'm convinced of a great investment opportunity. It doesn't matter what the investment opportunity is, but I'm convinced of it, and I'm going to borrow money. I'm going to, do you think it's a good idea if I go into my credit card and draw a whole lot of money out of that, or take a personal loan or borrow from a friend or whatever it is, to back this high growth investment? And it's a surefire winner. I know what I'm doing. To me, that's dumb stuff. Like that's taking a silly risk, because if you believe that you know what a high growth investment is, and you understand that maybe you found one, there's nothing wrong with putting a little bit of money in there that you can afford, rather than borrowing money that you can't afford. And being humble enough to know that even if you've done all your homework, even if all of the investment thesis that you've built up around a particular company or a theme or an exchange traded fund or whatever it is, even if you do everything right, if some president drops a bomb on another country far, far away and wipes you out, there is nothing you can do about it. All the homework in the world doesn't account for very bad luck. And you have to factor bad luck into your investment decisions. And so avoiding, silly risks, I think is a very good start, because you need to know that you have to be alive tomorrow to do this again. And you have to have money to be able to invest. So taking huge risks, on a surefire thing, and especially borrowing money for a surefire thing, to me is just really not smart. And I think a lot of the time we don't think about the downsides of our decision. So just to say, let's say you find Starlink amazing, and you think, Starlink is the core reason why SpaceX is going to be a very successful listing, and I'm going to, take all the money out of my bond and put it into that. Even if you're right, if some government somewhere just wipes out a monopoly of SpaceX's and takes it down, then it doesn't matter what you've done in terms of your homework. It's no longer a great investment, and now you're in a financial hole. So you've always got to consider, what happens if everything goes against me? Am I still going to be standing tomorrow? And then start to make investment decisions.
Okay. The other thing then is that fear of missing out is not a reason to invest, because I know actually there's the only thing worse than your friend making a lot of money in an opportunity you passed over is for that to happen in a difficult financial time when you really needed it.
Yeah. And the thing to know is there are always going to be some amazing investment opportunities. Some of them that will turn out to be very successful, and some of them that will turn out to be terrible. And as an investor, if you can make comfort with the fact that you cannot chase every great opportunity. Number one, because you don't have the time to do all the homework. Number two, because you simply won't have enough money to try and allocate, sufficient money to each of the great opportunities that are around. So if you can start with saying, okay, I just need to take advantage of a few great opportunities. I don't need to be there for every single one. And I think that, if you can make that switch in your brain, it's a psychological call you've got to make and say, I'm hunting for the long term here. I'm hunting for long-term capital growth. I'm not worrying about maximizing what happens to tomorrow or the next day. I'm worrying about being around next week so I can add a bit more, so that I can be around the week after and add a bit more. Then you start to realize that this whole fear of missing out is actually just a complete fallacy. And I can't tell you how many times you kind of, hear people saying, gee, I climbed into this thing because I knew it was surefire, because everyone else was making money. And all of a sudden, that surefire investment's gone nowhere. I mean, I think the big kind of NFT craze of a couple of years ago, where people were buying digital art, that was made in the virtual world, and, people paying hundreds, if not millions, of dollars for something which today is absolutely worthless. To me, that was a fantastic example of an opportunity that I was happy to miss, because I just knew I didn't understand, and I didn't think I could figure out how this was going to, work in, to kind of a 20 or 30 year decision. And maybe lastly, things that were doing incredibly well over the last 1 or 2 years, the winner from last year, that's not going to be necessarily the winner for next year. So chasing winners because everyone else was in and you weren't, that's probably an even bigger mistake than just missing out on the winner, is kind of throwing your good money after something which was successful, most likely tomorrow might just go flat or might go down again. So fear of missing out, I think you've got to change that to fear of, losing your money.
Yeah, no, that really does make a lot of sense. The other thing, I suppose, is that so often something comes along, we don't really understand what it is that we're doing. I mean, I remember the non-fungible token thing and saying to someone on the radio, I still don't understand what you're selling and therefore I'm not going to buy it. I mean, like straight. But that's one of the things, is that you have to actually know what it is that you're buying.
Yeah, and maybe to use Warren Buffett as a good example here. So, I mean, he got absolutely panned for not investing in tech in the early days. And he was, very open to say, well, I understand how furniture retailers work, and I understand how oil companies work, and I understand how manufacturers work. But what I don't understand is a tech company that's, chasing clicks or chasing views. And not to say that it's not going to be a good or bad business, I just don't understand it, so I'm going to avoid it. And I remember people saying he was a dinosaur, he'd lost it, he should retire. And that was in kind of halfway through 1999. And his returns weren't looking great compared to everyone else who was chasing all of these businesses. And, history shows that those businesses, the bulk of them blew up. Warren Buffett was still there, and his furniture retailers didn't blow up, and all the other businesses that he owned were still selling stuff and still making stuff, and there were things that he understood. And it took him a very long time to become comfortable with certain tech companies. So once he understood them, once he'd done the homework, and once he'd developed a depth of experience and expertise, very happy to invest in certain companies. And I think it's the same across every kind of investment theme. If you keep hearing about, some kind of new investment thing, whatever it is, and NFTs is maybe a great example again, and everyone's talking about it, it's okay to say, gee, I don't understand. And I don't have the competence to analyze that and figure it out to be a good or bad investment, so I'm going to avoid it. I think a lot of the time, some people just put money into things because they're too embarrassed to say, I don't know, I don't understand. And I think, again, if you can train yourself to say, I'm not going to have this fear of missing out. I'm equally going to only buy the things that I can understand simply. And I can write down in a few kind of lines or a few paragraphs what it is that I'm buying and why it should do well. And most importantly, why it won't blow up and go to zero.
We're talking to Warren Ingram this evening, personal finance, how surviving in this economy is the new winning, but also some of the things to avoid at the moment. Your questions for him, 011-883-0702, 021-446-0567, and of course voice notes on 072-702-1702. Lungile has got in touch with a question. Lungile says, hi, I'm 43 years old. I've been in the same company pension fund for 12 years. Since the two-pot retirement system came in, I can see now I have about 38,000 Rand sitting in what they call my savings spot. My car's been giving me serious problems. The repair bill is going to be 22,000 Rand. I don't have that money in savings right now. I'm tempted to withdraw from my savings pot to cover it. I'm not sure it's a good idea. What are the consequences? And Lungile, obviously, you want your car to work. You probably need your car to work. We'll get an answer from you, Warren, in just a moment.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Warren Ingram is the financial advisor and co-founder at Galileo Capital. We had a question from Lungile. Should she take out the 38,000 Rand sitting in her savings pension pot to have her car fixed because the repair bill is going to be 22,000 Rand? Warren, obviously you need a car to run. You need it to run reliably, but there'll be long-term consequences for taking the money out.
Well, it's such a tough question because, if you had to ask me, my default position is, almost never, ever take money out of your retirement funds. If you allow your money to stay in your retirement funds and to keep growing, by the time you hit retirement, you have a very nice, pot of money that looks after you, when you can't earn a salary anymore. And, when someone's 43, that means they've got, let's say, just 20 or so, 22 years to go. Of formal employment. Maybe they can do something after that as well. But it's getting to that time where, retirement savings becomes a real necessity, and you should be accelerating your savings where you can. And at the same time, as you say, Stephen, you need your car to earn an income. You need to get around. And so if you don't have a car, you might have no income. And so it's one of those where, kind of against almost like, every principle I have, I'd be saying, if there is no other way, and you've got no other kind of funding, then but it's probably the time. It's probably the justifiable reason why you draw money out of your savings pot, because you need the car to generate an income. If you work from home, and you never need your car for anything but fun, then that's a totally different story. Then it can sit in the driveway and you can build up the cash to eventually pay for the repairs. But that's not the case for most of us. We need our cars to earn a living. So it's probably, not the textbook answer. Probably, the textbook would say you've got to find another way. But, borrowing money, let's say on a credit card, that might cost you 20 or 25% in interest a year. And if it takes you 2 or 3 years to pay off that money, and you lose about a third of your money from your savings pot because you're going to pay tax on it, which is the real thing that bothers me as well, you're probably going to end up in a bit of a worse position having borrowed the money. So I know I'm waffling, but it's probably a really hard one to deal with. And I'm going to say, I'm kind of 60-40, 60% in favor of taking it out of your savings pot and settling the car. But there's a good argument to say if you can borrow money at a low interest rate, maybe you should do that and pay it down as quickly as possible.
I mean, you made a point at the start that you've just got to be able to keep going, and maybe that's the answer. This has got to be what helps you keep going so that you can. I mean, maybe there's something there. We do need to just go back to these rules quickly because they're so important, how to survive during this tough financial time. And the one is to stop rushing. There's no way out of this quickly. We have to all go through it slowly, but we will go through it.
We don't have kind of these profiles of, ordinary people that, saved a bit of money every month of their career and built up a very nice retirement pot, hit retirement age, lived a wonderful carefree life, and did the things that they wanted to do and lived productive, fruitful lives. That's not the one that gets the Instagram feed going or the one that gets all the headlines. But to me, that's really the deal here is understanding that you can build up wealth and accumulate capital over time, and doing it gradually is probably the very best way to do it. And we should be finding role models of people that have done this in that way. Unfortunately, they just don't attract the headlines, and they're certainly the kinds of people that don't look for headlines. But really, that's the thing. Stop rushing and just take your time and stay committed and stay disciplined and realize that time and patience are your biggest allies. And on the other side of that coin is rushing and impatience are probably your biggest enemies in all of this.
And then the other one is to spread your risk. Warren, there's another word. What word does it begin with D? I mean, what would that word be?
I've got to find my thesaurus and keep going here. So the principle of diversification here is really important. You want to know, if we think about a time like now, you can't be all exposed to America, or all exposed to the Middle East, or all exposed to South Africa. There is so much going on all around the world at the moment that you've got to spread your investments as far and as wide as possible, which means some of your investments are going to grow, some of them are going to be losing money sometimes. But your game here is, can I survive? Can I build up capital slowly? So if 60% of my investments are going up at the moment and 40% are going down, that means I'm okay. I'm doing okay. They haven't all blown up. So spread your money far and wide and even spread it over time. If you've got a lump sum, don't put it all into the markets at once. Spread it out and phase it in over a period of time. And just remember, time and patience here is the key, and let that compounding work in your favor. And this is not a race that gets won over 100 meters. This is a race that gets won over 90 kilometers.
It is really about making sure the most important thing is surviving, not making your money immediately, but to actually survive and keep going. You've got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's all about getting to the end of the race, not being the one to sort of be seen to be winning it.
Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking we're coming up to Comrades soon, and the people that win Comrades, they do it in, the very last kilometer, and then they're not leading from the front for probably the first 50 kilometers. And you are, in the world of money, you're in a race with yourself. That's all you are in. It doesn't matter what anyone's doing around you. And so understanding that and giving yourself the time to be around and to keep allowing your capital to grow, that's really the key in all of this. And I feel like we don't always have that perspective when we're looking at our money.
Warren Ingram, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. The financial advisor, co-founder at Galileo Capital. Such an important conversation to have around how to survive during this time. But it is actually about surviving, being able to keep going. There's a phrase, I think I get it from a movie, where there's a nobility in trudging. And if you are financially trudging, one foot in front of the other, and you get through this, you get to the top of the hill, and things change on the other side. That's really all it's about. Warren, thanks very much indeed.